Do you enjoy a good love story? Most women like stories of love and romance. Some men do if they will just let down their defenses. The Bible has several love stories. There's the story of Jacob and Rachel. Genesis chapter 29 verse 20 says, "So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her." Jacob had met Rachel, was a kinsman. Laban was her father. And so the agreement was that Jacob would work 7 years for Laban, basically, I guess you'd say for his dowry or whatever, so he could marry Rachel. Well, on his wedding night, actually the day after his wedding night, he discovered that the woman that he had with him was Leah, Rachel's sister. Laban gave the excuse, well, we don't marry the younger daughter before the older one. It says if you work another 7 years, well, then you can marry Rachel as well. And so he did so. We have the book of Hosea. It's an interesting love story. It tells of Hosea's love for his wife, even though she was unfaithful to him. And it serves as an illustration of God's love for Israel, even though she had been unfaithful. The book of Ruth is a love story of a different kind. It's the love of a daughter-in-law for her mother-in-law. You remember how that Naomi's husband had died, Ruth's husband and her brother-in-laws had died. But anyway, Naomi was going to go back to the homeland and told Ruth just basically to go back to her home. But Ruth says, no, I'm going to stay with you. She did so, showed great love and concern for her mother-in-law. And of course, Ruth ends up being one of the ancestors of Jesus. The Bible also gives a love story of the wrong kind. Not a story of love, but of lust and immorality. It is the story of Amnon and Tamar that is found in 2 Samuel chapter 13. Now, Amnon was the oldest son of David. Tamar was his half-sister, same father, different mother. Absalom was Tamar's full brother, same mother and father. He was the third-born son to David. Ray Brasseur says, David's adultery with Bathsheba brought God's severe disapproval of David's actions and his promise of consequences to David and his kingdom. Although David repented and was forgiven, we see the beginning of the fulfillment of the Lord's words in chapter 13. Bill T. Arnold says, nothing in 2 Samuel will be the same after David's sin with Bathsheba and his murder of Uriah. Verses 1 through 6 of our text, chapter 13, would you read with me? Now Absalom, David's son, had a beautiful sister, whose name was Tamar. And after a time, Amnon, David's son, loved her. And Amnon was so tormented that he made himself ill because of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin. And it seemed impossible to Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemiah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very crafty man. And he said to him, O son of the king, why are you so haggard morning after morning? Will you not tell me? Amnon said to him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. Jonadab said to him, lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill. And when your father comes to see you, say to him, let my sister Tamar come and give me bread to eat, and prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand. So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. And when the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, please let my sister come and make a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat from her hand. Amnon loved Tamar. His love was probably could better be defined, he wanted to make love to her. What was really at play here was lust, or perhaps love that turned to lust. But he wanted to be with Tamar. It so occupied him that he actually became ill. Maybe we'd say he was lovesick. Emotionally, he was very distraught. He desired someone that he knew he could not have. Tamar was a virgin, and this made it hard for him to think of satisfying his lust with her. Well, Amnon had a friend and a cousin. He noticed Amnon's appearance. He asked Amnon the reason why he looked so haggard morning after morning. When he found out, he gave Amnon advice on how to gratify his desires. One thing we can say about Jonadab was that he was shrewd. Well, Amnon pretended to be ill. David came to see him. Now we need to note that David had a number of wives, and he'd had children by different ones of those wives. The wives lived in different houses, and the children lived with them, apparently. I don't know that David saw his children on a regular basis, but he heard that Amnon was ill, so he went to see him. Amnon makes this request that Tamar come prepare food for him. Then we have the commission of immorality, verses 7 through 14. Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, "Go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him." So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, where he was lying down. And she took dough and kneaded it and made cakes in his sight and baked the cakes. And she took the pan and emptied it out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, "Send out everyone from me." So everyone went out from him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into the chamber, that I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the cakes she had made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. But when she brought them near him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, "Come lie with me, my sister." She answered, "No, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this outrageous thing. As for me, where could I carry my shame? And as for you, you would be as one of the outrageous fools in Israel. Now, therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you." But he would not listen to her, and being stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. Amnon has been given his strategy. He's appealed to his father David. David has agreed to the plan of Tamar coming and preparing food for him. And so Amnon carried out his planned and then carried out the plan. Tamar follows the instructions of David, her father, prepares the food. Amnon sends everybody out of the room. And then he takes hold of Tamar. We read, "But when she brought them near to him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, 'Come lie with me, my sister.'" Tamar knows this is wrong. Well, for that matter, Amnon knows it's wrong. Tamar appeals to Amnon not to sin against her. She pointed out the wickedness of his desire. Such a thing is not done in Israel. This went against the law of Moses and the role of Israel as God's people. Perhaps those in Canaan acted this way, but we were not to act this way in Israel. She says, "As for me, where could I carry my shame?" Shame and contempt would follow her everywhere. Then she says, "And as for you, you would be as one of the outrageous fools in Israel." That meant you would be like one of the disrespectful ones. He would reap shame also. In a final appeal, Tamar says to Amnon, "Speak to the king." Well, that was a last futile attempt. It was very unlikely that David would have allowed them to be married. That was against basically the law of Moses. Well, Amnon is stronger than Tamar, and so he fulfills his desire with her. And then we see the consequences of this immorality, verses 15 through 39. Such striking words. Then Amnon hated her with a very great hatred, so that the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love which he had loved her. He had satisfied his desire. And he next says to her, "Get up, go." He says, "I'm through with you." Tamar says, "No, my brother, for this wrong in sending me away is greater than the other that you did to me." But he would not listen to her. In fact, he called the young man who served him and said, "Put this woman out of my presence," and bolt the door after her. Not Tamar, not my sister. Put this woman out. She was put out of the house. The door was locked behind her. Verse 18 says she was wearing a long robe with sleeves. For thus were the virgin daughters of the king dressed. A particular kind of clothing was worn by the virgin daughters of the king. She was put out. As she went out, she put ashes on her head. She tore the long robe that she wore. She laid her hand on her head and went away, crying aloud as she went. She gets to the house. Absalom, her brother, sees her and says to her, "Has Amnon, your brother, been with you?" He apparently had some indication that something was in the works, that Amnon had wanted to do such a thing. But he says to his sister, "Now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this to heart." Well, he had not acted as a brother, had he? He had not acted as a good person. Tamar lived, a desolate woman, in her brother Absalom's house. Verse 21 says, when King David heard all these things, he was very angry. When he heard all of these things, he was very angry. David's king. He's also the father of Amnon. He could have punished Amnon. Perhaps he did not do so because of his own previous conduct. He had taken Bathsheba, another man's wife, had relations with her. David Roper said, he, that is David, did not discipline Amnon. He did not console Tamar. He did not even get everyone together to resolve the problem. He just got mad. How could he discipline Amnon when Amnon had copied a page out of his own book? Like father, like son, he's just a chip off of the old block. We are reminded of the words of Nathan when he confronted David with his sin. He says, "Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house." The consequences of David's sin are coming to pass. Absalom says to his sister, basically, you stay here in my house. And she did so. Verse 22 says, Absalom spoke to Amnon neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had violated his sister Tamar. More than likely, it was the practice that the children of David on a regular basis got together in the palace and had meals with the king. And here are two half-brothers, and they don't have anything to say to each other. 2 full years pass, and Absalom as his revenge. He had sheep shearers at Baal-Hazor. He invited all the king's sons to attend this sheep shearing. This was apparently a big event, including feasting. He came to the king and said, "Behold, your servant has sheep shearers. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant." But the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, let us not all go, lest we be burdensome to you." He pressed him, but he would not go, but gave him his blessing. Probably Absalom was not really wanting David to come, knew he wouldn't come. But then he said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon go with us." And the king said to him, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom pressed him until he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. The plot has developed. The scheme is working. And so when Absalom and his brothers are there at the sheep shearing, Absalom commanded his servants, "Mark when Amnon's heart is merry with wine. And when I say to you, strike Amnon, then kill him. Do not fear, have I not commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant." So the servants of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and each mounted his mule and fled. Absalom planned his revenge, and he carried it out. Does it remind you of David and Uriah? As David was trying to cover up his sin with Bathsheba, he brought Uriah from the battlefield. Uriah would not cooperate. He got Uriah drunk, and that still didn't work. Is the son once again remembering the actions of the father? At any rate, Amnon is killed, murdered. The concluding part of the chapter tells us that the news came to David, "Absalom has struck down all the king's sons, and not one of them is left." Well, you can imagine the horror of the king at hearing that all of his sons, all of the future heirs of the throne, are dead. He arose, he tore his garments, he lay on the earth. All his servants who were standing by tore their garments. Then Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother, said, "Let not my lord suppose that they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon alone is dead. For by the command of Absalom, this has been determined from the day he violated his sister Tamar." It's not as bad as you think, David. Only one of your sons is dead. But this death is a murder. It's been planned since the day of the rape. He says, "Now therefore let not my lord the king so take it to heart as to suppose that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon alone is dead." Well, I guess it's better news that one son has been murdered rather than all of them, but still such tragedy. We read that Absalom fled. He was concerned for his safety. He had arranged the murder of his half-brother. The other sons of the king come back to David. They all wept. Verse 37 again says, "But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Amminadab, king of Geshur." Absalom went to his maternal grandfathers in another place. David mourned for his son day after day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there 3 years. And the spirit of the king longed to go out to Absalom because he was comforted about Amnon since he was dead. David mourned the death of Amnon. Amnon had not been a good person in that he had raped his half-sister. David longed for his son Absalom, but Absalom had committed murder. And so they were estranged. Over a period of time, David was comforted at the death of his son, but he longed to go out to Absalom, longed to see Absalom. Again, we're reminded of Nathan's prediction. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house. David is seeing the consequences of his own sin. In the story of Amnon and Tamar, we see 3 points: the conspiracy of immorality, the commission of immorality, the consequences of immorality. I prepared a sermon on this text many years ago, and I have preached that sermon here in recent years. But this is a different sermon. In that original sermon, I made great application that we needed to be careful and avoid immorality. That immorality is a real and constant threat. Well, that is a needed warning. We live in a very immoral society, a very immoral world. But as I reflect on this text, it is not so much a lesson on avoiding immorality. It serves as a good illustration of the effects of that. But it's showing us how David's own immorality affected his family, and how that it continued in the family. That story is not over. On a future Sunday, we will continue looking at the repercussions of David's sins. Robert Gordon said, because of his behavior in the matter of Bathsheba and Uriah, the David of 2 Samuel chapter 12 through chapter 20 is a man under judgment, reaping publicly through his family the fruit of his cloistered sin. Yes, in Amnon and Tamar, we see the wrong kind of love story. A story not about love, but about lust. A story of immorality.